Tonight I'm really excited. Everybody I think in here knows Tom Fay. He's going to be giving us the program. Tom is a member of the Green County Historical Society. And tonight he's going to talk about, I'll tell you what he's going to talk about, this in Monroe history and Green County history. And tonight he's going to do a PowerPoint program showing 180-year-old artifacts, and will tell us about Jules Demun. And I'm really excited about this because I've never heard about this man. Has anybody heard about him? Oh, a couple. Okay, so it's all your time. Thank you for doing this for us.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think I know quite a few of you people in here. I'm going to talk about the French fur trading. Fur trader Jules Demun. He was an unlikely fur trader. So this is an 1831-32 map done by the first surveyors in Green County. And at that time it was part of Michigan Territory. And the man that did this was George Harrison. And 1831, so you can see this is 14. 14 refers to section 14 in Decatur Township. This is all Decatur Township. So if you, up here is Decatur Lake. And so the trading post was right, there's a bluff right there. And across, about 3/4 of a mile away, across the river, on the east side of the river, that is the village of White Dress Village. So, here he is, he's 50 years old, and he knows Henry Gratiot. Who was Henry Gratiot? Henry Gratiot was the Indian agent for the Winnebago Indians, and he was set up at Gratiot's Road, which is by Shullsburg up now. So I'm sure what happened was Jules Demun came back about 1830 from another visit to Cuba, and Henry Gratiot said, hey, come up here, there's Indians, you can trade with the Indians. The Chateaus, which were also members of a powerful trade company, would put up the money. Okay, so here we go. Here is the Sugar River. If you look upstream, a little ways above the water there, that's where Decatur Lake is, or the dam is there. And so here he came there, and then we're standing on the first bank, and here's the bluff on which he had his trading post. And here's the actual site of the trading post. It's about probably 50 feet above the river. He was trading with the Indians. Here's another view of earlier. It's probably 1770s or something. Trading post. Same thing. Bales of beaver skins. And in 1815, he, along with his brother-in-law, August Chateau, made a trip, an ill-fated trip, I might say, out to Colorado. 1815, there was no wagon tracks or whatever. He went pretty much along the Santa Fe Trail before the Santa Fe Trail actually existed. So what they did, they came up from St. Louis, up the Missouri River, and then they branched off to the Kansas River. And then this is all they were walking, like 20 miles a day, sometimes 6 miles a day, sometimes 12, sometimes 20. They had horses, but they were, Jules kept a diary, and he said at least half the time they walked. And this is, I think, this is about, and they took 30 trappers and traders with them, mostly trappers. And they ranged the Colorado Rockies trapping. And for 3 years, 1815, 1816, and 1817. And they accumulated $30,000 worth of beaver, most of the beaver skins. The Spanish governor thought so. And so he captured them, or he sent up troops to capture them. And so Demun, Chateau, and about 20 other traders were taken down in Santa Fe. And he gives an account of what happened. He always wrote quite a bit. What he said was, on the 1st of June, we were brought to Santa Fe. I was introduced to the governor, Don Pedro Allende. He inquired in a very angry manner why I had not obeyed him when ordered to get out of the Spanish dominions. On my reply, he got into a violent rage, repeating several times that he would have our brains blown out. August Chateau told me since that he had experienced the same treatment, and like myself was confined in a dungeon in the irons. Then on the 7th of June, 1817, I got the welcome intelligence that the governor had ordered my irons should be taken off. After 44 days imprisonment, we were presented before a court-martial composed of 6 members and the president. And the president happened to be the governor. Many questions were asked, but more particularly why we have stayed so long in Spanish dominions. I answered that, as being on the waters of the Arkansas River, we did not consider ourselves in the realms of Spain, as we had license to go as far as the headwaters of the said river. The governor denied that our government had a right to grant such license, and entered into such a rage that it prevented him from speaking, contenting himself with striking his fists several times on the table, shouting, "Gentlemen, we must have this man shot." So the governor was very upset. Luckily, a couple days later, the whole court-martial decided not to have Chateau and Demun shot, but they set him back on the bedraggled, most bedraggled horses they could find back to St. Louis, and they kept their $30,000 worth of furs. So they were like, and when Chateau and Demun were getting the trip ready, they advertised in the paper. This is not their advertisement, but this is something that was in the St. Louis paper. It says Friars wish to engage 100 men to ascend the Missouri to the Rocky Mountains, there to be employed as hunters, as a compensation to each man fit for such business, $200 per year. So if you were out there for 3 years, of course, you got $600 to die. So $200 per annum will be given for the services. Particulars apply what it would look like in the Colorado mountains, having a blanket coat. In the fall, actually in the summer, what happened was his wife, Isabel, and his 3 daughters, and him, they all came up to Gratiot Grove. Now, Gratiot Grove, can you see over here? I should point it out. Gratiot Grove is not Gratiot. Gratiot Grove, let's see, right there. And Gratiot is right about here on the Wolf River. Gratiot Grove was actually a little lead mining town. But in 1831, Demun and his wife and family came up and stayed at Gratiot Grove for about a month or something. And then his wife and children went back, and he went on. He followed over here to Hamilton's. Who knows what Hamilton is? I'm sure. Yeah, Wyota. It was called Hamilton's Diggings at that time. And again, if you look at this map, this was made in 1829, and it's not entirely correct, because actually Wyota should be up here. Monroe, I made it here. There's Monroe. Here is some of the things that he actually had at the trading post, and he brought them up on the steamboat. Some of the things are, let me see, 20 dozen paper looking basses. Indians seem to like those quite a bit. A lot of white cotton, and you can see here 10 pair of 3-point scarlet blankets. Point was like the thicker the blanket was, the higher the points were. So then now you can see down to 2.5 points. That's a little thinner blanket, and then 2 points, 1.5, and 1 point was like just like a sheet, I guess. But so he had all those things. So there's black, 25,000 black beads and 25,000 white beads for a total of 50,000. And we didn't actually find any beads at the trading post. I guess we take the mobile fire steel. And Christie, what do they use those for?
Light fire?
And how do they do that?
Strike it on.
Oh, yes, okay. So the jaws of a steel trap is probably a muskrat trap. Of course, here's the muskrats. Now in southern Wisconsin, there were no beaver at all. The beaver had been trapped out by 1831. All the beaver were, you see these two big nails. I think the door was attached to the spindle, and then this part would go into the hinge. And this is very interesting. We found a lot of hand wrought clinch nails about 2 inches. Clinched about 2 inches. There's more. And that's probably because here's the interior of what I think the trading post looked like. The door would be made of maybe planks, and then another plank, and then on the outside hand wrought nails, and then it would be clinched here, about 2 inches. So here, here, and here. All trading posts would be 16 by 20. No windows necessarily. You didn't need windows. And just that's log chimney also. So here's 1986 excavations, and we are excavating. There's Gary Felder. Recognize that? Yep. And here's where we actually have staked the ground out and are going to excavate some square meters. We excavated 1 square meter usually every time we went there. And we screened all the dirt. Here's, I don't know if you know, there's Winona Walters, Don Walters, Cynthia Bagley, and there the gentleman with 2 hats. It was a hot day, Don Walters. And this is Professor Don Thompson taking the measurements and notes at the site. Looks like this is, and so what happened again, 6 months after the trading post was built, which was October of 1831, I believe, sometime around April, May, it was burnt in the Black Hawk War. And who's to say who burned it? Maybe the Winnebagos, but I suspect maybe one of the raiding parties of the Sauk and Fox Indians might have burnt it. Find a picture of but anyway, around here, June 14th, there was some occasion where some Indians ambushed some settlers at Spafford Creek on June 14th, and then on June 16th, I believe, they had the Battle of the Pecatonica up by Woodford. So this was just before that, and she's really worried about it here. She's well persuaded that your existence will never take away the happiness of your family, Isabel Tumont. So she's worried, and so apparently he's still up in Wisconsin or the Michigan Territory in June 1st. So what happened to him in 1831, or 1832, he came back to Santa Fe and he gave up trading entirely and he started working for the government. And so he was very fluent in Spanish and French and English, so he became a translator for the Indian agents. The main Indian agent, who happened to be Clark, of Lewis and Clark. He was the main agent in 1832. So yeah, he died in 1843, and he was a clerk. He was a translator, but he never again